And Maria Scheinberg is with us. Okay. Another literati. Kimberly, always good to see you. Frank, hello.
Hi.
Jeffrey, is Robbie with us tonight?
No, she's not.
Okay.
The
Brad.
movie is too much for her.
Okay. I understand. I understand that. Brad and Karen, welcome. Risa, hi. Fern, always welcome. And Joanne, love that cat. I guess the cat was watching the movie and fell asleep. And Mona, hi.
Hi.
So let's go
I'm
with
the
this.
cat.
Wake the cat up, will you, Joanne? So, I forgot my
I'm awake.
notes.
That's all you get.
Okay, I'm gonna get my notes. Hold on.
I think Hannah needs to participate. We're such a small group.
That's up to her. So it's a small group. I'm not surprised. Oh, Joel Jaspin has joined us. Good. And Peg, always good to hear from you. And Risa, did I welcome you? Well, here I am welcoming you now. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm not hearing. Yeah, okay. So let's I don't know, should we talk about the elephant in the room, or shall I call it the howler monkey first? Let's save it for later. This movie may appear to have been opaque to some of you, as it did maybe to Robbie, because it's very much under the surface, but the surface isn't, the underground part of it is not that far from the surface once you understand how to talk the language of the movie. So if you'll allow me to take us through the movie, Doris is going to join us. That's a good thing. Right off the bat, apart from him sleeping on the couch in his office, we go into this very odd interview with the American reporter. Later he says she doesn't know anything, she's American. And she proves him right, because in the interview, she doesn't understand the high art gobbledygook. And even when he explains it in the simplest terms, she doesn't get it. She said, oh, okay, well, that's all the questions I have for now. It's a very funny scene if you understand the discomfort of the Moss character, and his he's used to it. He treats her with total respect, and answers her questions, and tries to decode that circuitous message. She doesn't get it when he says, if I put your purse in the gallery here, would that make it art? I mean, this is really what the whole film is about. And Mona, I can see you're about to shake your head. So thank you for
I'm
that.
agreeing. I agree.
I know you'd agree. I'm just saying, I know. The film, this first scene lets us in on the secret that, as nice a guy as he is and tries to be, there are some people who just don't get it. And that's because they're still people, and he tries to deal with them from a position of respect. The next scene is taking down the statue, the old Victorian statue of some guy on a horse. What do you think of that when it goes wrong? Did anybody giggle or sniggle at that? I mean, this, terribly old Victorian or earlier statue is torn off its moorings and crashes to the ground. And what does this say to us about old art? It says it can't keep up. It's no longer relevant. So what do we replace it with? And in the same spot where they took down the statue, we then go to the rotary saw cutting into the old concrete plaza and laying the groundwork for the square, which isn't clear in the beginning. And then you see them laying the lighting fixture in the grooves and pounding it down. And it's a not so subtle statement about the new replacing the old. I'm not making a value judgment either way. I know I did about the old art. We have new people joining us. Steve Zimmerman, hi, and Carol, welcome.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you. You've been traveling a lot, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay. So etching
Jim,
the square, cutting into the concrete plaza, in a way is the same as destroying the old, because that plaza was built before that statue was installed, I suspect. And it's another parallel. There's so many parallels in this movie. Steve, your hand is raised, or
yeah, I
you
was
frozen?
gonna say, referring to the guy on the horse's art, I think is you're reading more into it. I mean, a lot of these reverential, old-fashioned monuments, I don't think they were even intended to be art. They're intended to be honoraria of a sort. And they're very different things. I'm not saying you're not getting rid of the old to put in the new, but it's not a matter of what art you're going to look at. I think they're very different things. And I think it's two totally different considerations as to, do we want to honor this general from the 100 Years' War or whatever, or do we want to have a modern art installation? And I don't think you're replacing like one art with another art, and I don't think that's and if that's what's going on, I think it's a grossly oversimplification of what should be considered.
Okay. I accept your interpretation of it. I think you're slicing the onion too thin. And Marina, who is grinning into her computer, I think has an answer for us. You want to take that one on, Marina? Yeah. Okay. Marina, who's an expert in history and art.
Well, I didn't mean to grin. I may be thinking on into my own experiences, like they were taking down the monuments of Soviet Union, as they took down the monument to Dzerzhinsky or Lenin monuments. What do you do with them? Or nowadays in Ukraine, while the passions are against Russian language, they are along the way dismantling the monuments to Russian poets. So where do you take those monuments? The monuments to the Soviet warrior, the Soviet soldier who liberated Europe in Austria, they have, as a term of armistice, they cannot dismantle the monument to Soviet army in the center of Vienna. And it stands there, ugly as it is. So this is called monumental art. And whether we consider it art or not, this is the term. So
Okay.
that's what I can say.
Okay. Thank you. We have our own battle with monuments to Confederate soldiers and generals, like the Robert E. Lee statue in Charlottesville, home of that wonderful parade the white supremacists put on. And I think if we look back, and none of us are history experts, but if you look back at the old paintings we see, going back to the mythological paintings, we celebrate people from history all the time monumentally in what is considered high art. Now, it's not just because these people were religious or civic leaders, it's because the way the artists interpreted the scene around those people. So Steve, I want to take a slightly different tack from you and saying that it was considered art and history was a useful vehicle for artistic interpretation. I think the scene still draws a line in the sand between the old and the new. And that's what's important. We need art that serves us better today because we are different than the 18th century or the medieval era. Risa, your hand is raised.
Well, you asked if anyone laughed with the statue. I laughed then because I thought when they was taking it down, they put so much effort into tying it up and everything instead of just taking hammers to it, that they were going to move it somewhere
Well,
outside
maybe.
of the museum. So that's what I thought. And I spent a lot of the movie laughing as things went crazy wrong for him.
You have to leave this room.
He was well intentioned. He just he was well intentioned, and just things went crazy. And it started with that monument that broke. He didn't want that to break. He just wanted to move it somewhere. But that's
Okay,
how I saw
let's
the
move on from
movie.
that scene. I think that throws the gauntlet down into art and history and what is meaningful at one time or another.
Okay.
My take on our Confederate monuments is we shouldn't have destroyed them. We should all put them all together in a theme park, somewhere in Kansas, so everybody could get to it more easily, explaining the history of racism and bigotry in this country and how we used to monumentalize it and revere it and respect it. So we're not destroying history. We are putting in its proper place for today's sensibility. Rest my case. Now, another strong theme that's developed in this in the beginning is the notion of beggars. The first sense we have of it is there's a woman on the plaza, right, saying, save a human life, and everybody's walking past her, right? And one guy in a business suit says, what's that? She says, save a human life. And he says, oh, no, and he walks on. And then Christian walks by and he's on his cell phone, and there's this shot, it's very telling. He's walking, the camera is walking with him from the side, and the people around him are like soldiers, almost like fascist soldiers. They're walking forward, and in the beginning of that shot, they all have cell phones. So it's like that's their rifle. This is how we have regimented ourselves to be so attuned to our cell phones. When we walk, we don't see the world. And then we come to probably one of the most brilliant scenes of the movie, and I have to credit my wife Janice as saying, that's fake, she disappeared. And that is the saving the damsel in distress that turns out to be a pickpocket heist. And this was just brilliant because everybody's believable. She's a little bit over the top because she won't stop. You just want to gag her, especially when she's hiding behind the men. But it's perfectly cast. The other guy is like also wearing a business jacket, but the thug who comes up is wearing a wife beater t-shirt, right? And he's muscled, and we've seen these outrageous husbands, try and hurt their wives. So they're playing on a common social trope. In a way, the pickpockets are staging political theater, only their object is to fleece the audience, not to make a point about art, but they're using art as a deception for reality. This is just brilliant filmmaking here. And it's really close to the surface. So I don't think it's an intellectualization to say the filmmaker intended this. It's part of his whole scheme. And this is repeated throughout the movie. And of course, the funny thing is that Christian doesn't realize he's been had after they don't exchange names with the other guy who he thinks is also a hero. And he's walking away and he starts looking for his cell phone in his pockets. And you don't even have to see his face. He realizes he's been had. It's a great joke. And part of it's great is because it's so understated. And we've talked a lot about minimalism and understatement before, but you have to learn to really like this, especially in a movie like this, where it's you may need a program to tell the players apart, but it's so well thought through. This is a brilliant movie intellectually. And I think what saves it from being a total erudite elite intellectualism is that it's humanistic. Christian, as Risa pointed out, is a decent guy. He constantly tries to do the right thing, but the world is conspiring against him. The world is too woke even for him in the press conference, or the world is too backwards for him because he's reviled. So let's proceed. It's like, in a way, Christian, even though he's a museum director,
I think Carol has been wanting to speak. I'm just wondering if people can get rid of the emojis where they've got their hand up and they're done, and people use the hand emoji.
I know, I wasn't.
Carol's is not up. It's her
Oh, I'm
hand
sorry.
is up now.
It was actually. May I?
Your electronic hand was not up though. We
No,
couldn't see
my
it.
electronic hand was not. Do you prefer that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it helped.
I'm sorry. I will
That's
use.
okay.
May I venture? You left the statue. My only comment about that was that when the statue, the monument was toppled, the only damage to it was the decapitation of the person being honored, of the writer. It was just his head came off. So I thought that was a choice. And as far as laughing, you mentioned humor. My first sense of real laugh out loud humor was when the beggar is offered a ciabatta. She knows exactly what she wants to order from the sandwich shop. And she says a ciabatta, and then she says, but no onions. And so she's going to get free food, but she wants it the way she wants it.
So that's a political scene too, isn't it? It's commenting on both the need and the expectations of the needy, and far right wingnut would say, oh, that guy's so woke, he won't even, shut her up. But at least he has the dignity not to, ask for onions to be separate. There's so many different ways of looking at each person and Christian's behavior in all of this. I was amused by the attitude of that woman's, her gall, somebody might say, to ask for no onions or to be so specific. Instead of buy me some food, I'm really hungry. No, I want a chicken ciabatta. The specificity really gets inside her brain for us as outside her brain. And the filmmaker is very much aware of doing this. By the way, I suspect that the beggars in the movie are all Turkish, Syrian, or Gypsy. I can't back that up, but there is an ethnicity to them. And I know that the Gypsies do have a particularly bold way of begging wherever they are in Europe. Maybe others have had that experience. I'm not trying to racially profile anybody. I'm just saying that the director wanted people who would be outcast on their appearance alone. And that's why he chose those particular actors to do that. Who knows? He may have even people. Yeah.
Jim, two things. First of all, returning to the statue again, we learn later on in the movie that the museum is in the square where the palace was.
Right.
So it is perfectly logical that statue is a statue possibly of a king, and destroying the statue is a symbol of the democratization of art.
Yes. Good point.
So that's one point. The second point is the word that keeps repeating again and again and again in the movie is the word help.
Yes.
We have people who are asking for help and people who are trying to give help. And we get the whole spectrum of the ways people ask for help and the ways that they provide help. And ranging from very peaceful to very aggressive at both ends. So this to me is a story about help and in a sense the unintended consequences of both asking for help and about providing that help.
And denying it or ignoring it.
Yeah, not giving it.
Exactly.
Or not giving it. Well, I mean, history abounds with people who did not help. Witness the perpetrators versus those who stood silent during the Holocaust, or in the genocide in Kosovo, or wherever you have it, or here in this country with our own racism, where was the white middle class in the 60s or in the 50s? We were complacent, and therefore we contributed to the systemic racism. And this is what the Floridians, mostly DeSantis and his school boards, are trying to do now. They're trying to erase that knowledge, that awareness, into saying, no, we're very proud of our past, as though the woke left is not proud of our past. We're also ashamed of it. And that's the right historical perspective. But these people can't take the challenge, the historical challenge that the past presents us with. DeSantis, of course, is just a political Machiavel. And I'm not saying that he has a reasonable intellectual point of view. I have yet to hear it from the far right. But let's move on. But again, this is what a good film brings out in us is it reverberates through all our experience of our own past and the present. And it's very interesting. After Christian realizes his own phone is gone, he asks other people for help. Can I use your phone? No, they walk past him. So it's like history repeats itself. And he was a victim of a crime, and now he's the victim of indifference. Oh my God. It's so easy to be on both sides of that three-sided fence. You know, it's probably more sides than that. But he's experiencing everything, which is what I think somebody said, that all these things befall him, and he's just trying to be the good guy, and his world is imploding. Also, I think something very cute, the Asian visitors to the museum, there's a quick scene where they're lost and the guide in the chair has to point them towards the castle. She says, you're looking for art, go that way. Of course, the sign is different. It's a bit oblique what was going on there, but it's like, that's the filmmaker's shorthand of saying everybody needs guidance. Now, a hilarious scene is the marketing meeting. How many people have been in marketing meetings where outside experts are brought in to give their estimated view on social media or psychology or team building? It's like, this was a great lampoon. So nobody's been in those meetings, but it's like the blind go in leading the blind, but the seemingly unblind just learn the catchphrases to earn their keep and their consultant's fee. They don't really help the employees who are being exposed to the inclusiveness seminar or the equality seminar. You know, it's like a game. It's a corporate game paying homage to being sensitive to other people's needs and feelings. So let's talk about that meeting. The first thing is, how about the older guy with a white gray hair and a white beard who brings his baby into the meeting? Is that kind to him, or is that a joke? Aren't we lampooning, you know, middle-aged or close to senior second marriage dads who are, you know, so with the program that they bring their baby to work because the corporation allows it? Did anybody find that funny? Steve Zimmerman, I think you did.
Oh yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
And the baby continues to cry in the scene. And in other scenes, you hear the baby in the background when the guy is present or not. It's like, if you listen to the soundtrack, you know, there are these haunting reminders of the hypocrisy of our time. I don't want to say the guy was being a hypocrite because he brought his child to work, but
that's resonant with other things that happen later. It's the member of the audience in a later scene who has Tourette's and what they do about
yes.
it. It's just it's a shock, and you know, is the person wrong, or those who are trying to overlook it the other way? And in some ways, it's also the monkey in the room, the gorilla. It's so unexpected and out of place, and it has somewhat of an upsetting, awkward, this is not the way it should be kind of feeling.
Okay, let's not go there quite yet, but you're right. The Tourette syndrome is an important scene because there's also shaming that goes on there. Somebody turns at the end of the scene and says, here's a psychoneurotic disorder, please show some respect, right? And the arch right wingers would say, yeah, but he's showing no respect for the interview subject and the pretentious artist who's there in his pajamas with a sport jacket over them, by the way. That guy was hilarious, and he comes back later in the monkey scene. So again, we have this thing about a situation has many sides to it. And we as a civilization are torn at how to interpret it. And I think this film is just fabulous. It's poking fun at everybody, left or right, handicapped or not, pretty or not, rich or poor. We're all sabotaged by this culture, this cancel culture, and this mistaking a part for the whole. All beggars are that way. Or, You accused me of being a thief. No, I didn't, but your parents misread that. It's like we have trouble reading each other's minds, and we don't take the time to stop and figure out how the other person is taking it in. So, okay, we started that, and that's just the beginning of the marketing meeting. How about the wardrobes of the two guys? I won't call them Mutt and Jeff, but they're Tick and Tock, or, Humpty and Dumpty. They are a hoot. One, they're a generation younger than Christian, right? They're two guys. They both wear quilted down vests underneath their sport jackets, and that down vest is over a white shirt. Talk about uniforms, and they come off as marketing consultants, but at least they're honest. What do they say? There's no edge inherent in this artwork, right? Now, what they mean by edge is not what Christian comes back to define as its meaning. Edge to them is what's going to make other writers write about it. What's going to make it go viral? And it's not like the stupid, cute girl who says, well, how about the ice bucket challenge? That alone is cute. And I have been in marketing meetings where people say the dumbest things because they're not creative. They're just copying what's been done. And of course, the ice bucket challenge doesn't fly anymore because it's been done. So it's like what people in positions, administrative positions, executives, studio executives are notorious. They don't know how to be creative. They only know how to repeat success that was done before. I've been on many reality shows that point blank told us we wanted to be like The Apprentice, or we wanted to be like Survivor or The Bachelorette. They don't want something unique and original the audience couldn't have thought of on their own. They want something that duplicates the success like the last success. So in other words, they're looking for a commercial product. They want to stamp out a duplicate that may stand in and garner some of the same success. I wanted to say this for later, but why do you think Barbie and Oppenheimer are such runaway hits? Has anybody seen one or both? Mona, you have to have seen Barbie. Risa
I've seen
did?
Oppenheimer.
Okay, let's save that. Let's talk about
Oppenheimer.
Barbie first. Who's seen Barbie? None of you?
Carol,
Don't you have granddaughters?
Carol.
Carol.
I saw it twice.
And why did you see it twice, Steve? Jeffrey, sorry.
Well, the first time I saw it with my girlfriend. The second time I went with my grandchildren to see it. But I will tell you, I'm just going to say this flat out. That movie is incredible. It deals with so many different kind of issues in society, the male toxicity and her creator, all death. There's really a lot going on in that film. It wouldn't surprise me if it won Best Picture.
It's certainly going to win awards, as will Oppenheimer. Carol, what's your take on Barbie? You're frozen, so kick your computer and come to life. Okay, until you do that.
Can
Steve,
you hear me?
Yes.
yes,
Oh.
you're live now.
Okay. I don't know what angle you would want the answer. I think it's a message.
No, I want your reaction to Barbie. The question is,
My reaction was
things that hit us in new ways we could not imagine ourselves.
I think it's Greta Gerwig's platform piece, and she should tell her position any way she wants. I like very much that they used a narrator, and that was Helen Mirren, no less than Helen Mirren, who broke the fourth wall so that this piece, which is pretty unique. I mean, in modern times, in modern film, I can't think of one quite like it. And what she did was bring the audience in as a confidant, and therefore you didn't take it seriously for face value every single second. I think it's definitely a multi-message piece. There's an awful lot of talent on the screen. There's choreography that's really fun and well done. And the prototypes are, they're understandable. What was surprising in a positive way was, as you said, Jeffrey, the depth to which the issues went from death and depression to being an outsider, not an insider, and never the ideal. And it had some heart. It really did.
And it's a journey into identity. Who am I? Which is what Barbie's journey is all about. And then she lays it on Ken. You need to find your identity. So,
Well,
but
I think it's a great
return to the
film.
film. Can I return to the film for a minute?
Yes, please.
I didn't care for the museum creator or curator. I don't think there were any really. I mean, he was terrible to his kids, and I just don't think he was a really good guy. I don't see anybody in this film as really being a good person. And this theme of help, which, surrounds, is embedded in the film. Everybody in today's society needs help because things are such a mess, and somebody has a chimpanzee sitting right next to them.
Well, that's the elephant in the room. That's not an elephant. She doesn't comment on it at all, but she closes the bedroom doors. I mean, it's sly that way. Yeah. Go ahead,
Jim,
Brad.
you were talking a minute ago about the clothing of the two guys, but I want to go back to the very first scene where we see Christian lying with his orange socks. And right away, I mean, he is a hipster. And, I had him pegged from scene one as the type of person he was based on those socks and based on his looks.
I think you're right. He was very much that, but he was much more skilled than the wannabes. He actually was one. He was very slick, very smart. And Jeffrey, I can't entirely agree with you because I think he cared about his daughters very much, as distracted as he usually was from them. But let's save that for the end of the film because it ends with them. Frank Reiner, did you have a question? I see your hand up. If not, then there's Mona. Somebody's hand is up in your house. We're having trouble with Zoom today. Everybody's frozen. Can you hear me?
You're muted.
Yes, I can hear you.
Here I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead,
Wait a
Frank.
minute, it's Mona's turn.
Another take on this is that
Definitely Mona's.
the square is explained earlier in the movie about what it represents, and it's a safe place where you can ask for anything, you can help, and you get help within the square. The incidents we're talking about in the real world, not the art world, are the opposite. You don't get help, on your own. Bad things happen. Stuff happens that you can't control. It's the artistic ideal versus the real world, as I see it.
It is, as expressed by the artist, it is an ideal place. The square doesn't really exist anywhere, but it's an act of fantasy to say, let's imagine this were possible. Because once you're inside a zone of protection, you have expectations of other people, what they'll do for you, and what expectations of yourself, what you must do for them. So it's a social dynamic. It's said in the movie, social aesthetics, right? It's BS in museum talk, but it's trying to look at what we are like when we gather and calling attention to how we behave towards each other. It's a very moral concept. It's very biblical, excuse me. Do unto others, this is echoes inside the square. And it's really trying to say things in new ways, and talked about how our current language and our current political correctness restricts what we can do for each other because it has put up so many barriers from us. Now, let's move on. He retells the story.
Sorry, would you explain that last
Could you
statement?
please call on Mona? The woman has had her hand up.
Oh, gosh.
But she's frozen on my screen.
She's not frozen on
And
our
she's
screen.
muted. Okay, Mona, if you can hear us, please talk.
I can hear you perfectly, and yes,
No, now you're moving. Okay.
I have had my hand
Yeah.
up for a long time. I will try to be brief. My take on the movie, very much influenced by the initial scene where the statue is destroyed, is that the whole thing is a very sly satire of supposedly brilliant contemporary art. It seemed
Yep.
to me that from the outset of the movie, he was suggesting that in the course of making all of these important changes, people are so stupid and careless and uncaring that they just ruin things. They have no appreciation for the past. They have no understanding of how even to move the statue without decapitating it. There's a level of carelessness and ignorance that he is just slicing them to smithereens. And it's repeated later when the cleaner who's on the mounted vacuum cleaner
Right.
goes and ruins the different conical mounds and changes one. And I'm thinking, well, of course you can't clean an art installation that's a series of unique conical mounds of gravel with a machine like that. You know, you'd have to do it by hand and use a broom and a dustpan and be very careful. But it seemed to me that throughout the movie, yes, Christian knew the lingo, he knew the vocabulary, he knew how to talk to the press. I expected him actually to put his glasses away and throw out his supposed notes and speak from the heart at every press conference after the one where he did that, because I thought, oh, this is part of his shtick. But I thought the filmmaker did an absolutely brilliant job of making fun of the academic pretensions of the different artists. And I thought the reason they had the chimpanzee who puts on lipstick in Elizabeth Moss's presence, and the baby, and then at the end, the artist who refuses to play by the rules at that incredible gala dinner, where at first they don't obey the rules, they're not sitting quietly. And, you know, later on, after they see a little violence and aggressive behavior, that audience is totally different. I thought it was showing us a way of a kind of prehistoric kind of consciousness. You know, babies aren't thinking in language. They're not parsing out what is the appropriate response in the situation. They just live, they cry, they giggle, they express how they feel at that moment. And the same with the chimp, and the same with the artist who wouldn't play by the rules at the end, even when Christian acknowledged this is the artist and gave his name and we'd like to thank him. And the artist, that whole performance was about being an animal and feeling and reacting and making people understand that they need to live in the present and be here now. So I thought it was just an amazing skewering
It was.
of a lot of stuff, but especially of the art world. And I agree with the person who said he was very nice to his daughters. You know, he apologized for yelling at them. My father yelled at me constantly. He never said he was sorry. You know, that just wasn't there.
Okay, I want to go back to the context of the dinner with this howler monkey performance. That comes in the context of the video going viral and the huge uproar about it. So you see, what we're seeing among these tuxedoed wealthy donors is that it's not just the internet and the hoi polloi who misconstrue the meaning of things. These guys in tuxedos and their wives were told it's an experience you're going to go through. Don't move, you know, or he'll come after you. And eventually it was so convincing, people forgot it was a theater, and they took him literally. And what do they wind up doing at the end when he finally drags the woman off by her hair? they push him off her, and men rush up and they say, "Kill him, stomp him."
Yeah, they
Who's the
turn into a
animal
bunch
there?
of animals themselves.
Right. So that goes back, James. Ivory did a film, and Lord of the Flies, and even Triangle of Sadness, which is Aslan's next film, has an element of that. On a desert island, we regress into primitive behaviors. So he's poking fun at that hoity-toity arts establishment, saying how much they don't see and how much they're willing to blame and generalize about things, and they don't get art because they don't get make-believe. At some point they're pushed beyond their ability to believe, and this is one thing that the film is harping on, that we all have trouble understanding art, and it's seen different ways. Look, in our own film group here, we constantly have examples of people seeing the same scene in different ways. And there's a reason for that, and I try and get into that. The point is that art does this to us, and it's sort of a construct of consciousness, that because we can reflect on ourselves in a way that the animals beneath us can't. I mean, sure, you watch Instagram, you say, oh, those dogs have awareness. They do, and so do the cats, and so do the lions and tigers and bears, but they don't create art. Sarcastic, ironic, self-reflexive art. And this film is a whole piece of self-reflexive art, where it's asking us to look at how we perceive things and how we perceive them wrongly. Now, who was frightened to death of that scene where the guy jumps on the table and drags her off by her hair? Is anybody afraid or offended by that?
Very uncomfortable.
Okay, Carol, did you say that?
Very uncomfortable.
Comfortable, okay. But did you ever think it was real?
At one point, it didn't matter. I needed to turn away. It was more than I was comfortable watching.
Okay.
I guess I projected myself sitting there. I could identify and would be truly
Okay.
scared.
Okay. Is that good
I also
filmmaking?
wanted it to
Wait,
stop.
let's stay with Carol. Let's stay with Carol, Marina. Is that good filmmaking? You put yourself in place of an actor in the scene. I think you're frozen, Carol, so say something.
I'm not frozen. I'm pensive. I'm not. I'm here. I'm not
Your
frozen.
picture's frozen.
I'm
Your
not
picture.
gesticulating. I'm thinking about that scene. It wasn't out of my realm of imagination to be present at a dinner like that, and I didn't perceive it as art. I saw it as a deranged acting out and a bit taken way too far, and I would feel physically compromised. I would be afraid.
Okay, it's the same reaction as the internet had from seeing the little girl blown up in the square, right? It exceeded my sensibilities, my sensitivities. So that's how it reinforces where the museum is at in terms of its public relations. That's the comment it's making. That scene, by the way, is 11 minutes long.
Yeah, it was incredibly long. Actually, I thought it was too long.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts to it, but it could have been shorter. He could have poked less ears and hair, and but he does. How about the artist who's being interviewed in the Tourette's scene? He's the guy who gets picked on the most, and he tries to be the adult in the room and play along with them, but the howling monkey doesn't let him, and he's chased away. I thought that was very telling, that this guy, this egotistical artist, thought he could be a hero, and he wound up being as intimidated as anybody else, just in a different way. I want to go back to the art installation as well, because that happens at 1 hour in. Did anybody notice the sign on the back wall, the neon sign?
Yeah,
What did it say?
you are nothing. I think it said you are nothing.
You have.
You have
No,
nothing, or you are
have
nothing. You have nothing.
You have. It was have.
Rather. Okay.
Right. So the point is, we're all piles of gravel or ash. Nothing amounts to much. And that's the joke about some of the gravel got displaced by the cleaner, because what does it matter? It's just another pot of gravel. It's like, it's a joke on the art of the art. The point of the art is like, they treat it so reverentially, whereas it's not meant to mean anything. It's meant to point to the meaninglessness of our individual existence. If
It's
you look
definitely
at
an attack on like conceptual artists or conceptual art or
Oh, it
people like
is. It
Jeff
very
Koons.
much, it's both. The film attacks artists and art and trends and, marketing trends. Look at those two, guys. They're hilarious. I have to call attention to when they come back with their pitch and they're in the bathroom and he's deciding whether or not to put his hair up or down. It's like they're marketing themselves to their clients. It's like the salesmanship never ends in our culture, right? It's like everybody is selling, even the salesman.
What's the
And,
rock, paper, scissors about, where they're deciding who is going to
who goes first?
Yeah.
Yeah, who's going to go first? Yeah, which is so juvenile. It's like it shows the juvenile nature of the whole argument about being hip or current or trendy or what's acceptable now. We can't decide, so therefore we'll go back to the schoolyard when we didn't have any of this awareness. It's like everybody's just a child. I thought that was hilarious. It's this, if you look at the movie that way, you laugh all the way through it. I miss anybody? Marina or Steve Miller or Risa? Your hands are up.
Yes.
Okay, Risa.
I just want to say that I saw the square as what we call today the safe space. For example, we're in a safe space here. We could say whatever we want, pro, con, object, whatever it is, and we're in a safe space. We like each other, we'll etc. The same thing
You
is
can't
true. You can't be afraid to say what you're going to say. It's safe. And the dinner is also, and I've been to lots of those dinners, it's a safe space, and this has been completely destroyed. And I was hysterical laughing. I thought it went too far. I definitely thought it went too far. Pulling the woman by her hair, jumping on the table. Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see him actually hurting somebody.
Right.
But your home is supposed to be a safe space. The boy was being harassed in his safe space and unable to communicate with his parents. They wouldn't believe him. That is a very, very unsafe situation. So I saw this as a theme in there too. And
Absolutely.
by the way, I don't understand why every time our guy walked, his shoes were so noisy. There was a lot of noise in the movie, but I couldn't understand why his shoes were so noisy.
I'll leave that to you and his shoemaker. But you're so right. Safe space. Now, safe space is often a term applied to universities. And the University of Chicago, when this term was coined, the president, and Chicago is a very conservative school, was funded by the Rockefellers, who actually would seem to be very progressive today. And the president said, we will not have safe spaces on this campus because a campus life is supposed to expose you to ideas that might be threatening. So the safe space has a bad connotation for many on the right because they say, oh, it's not fulfilling an educational function if you're protected all your little fears. And I'll give you another example. In knowing some law professors, they have complained that some students won't be taught rape law because they have been raped themselves. So how else can you teach rape and the concepts behind rape and violation of human rights and civil rights if people are so sensitive they won't hear it? And this is like the main legal access we have today to educate a class of lawyers. And by the way, more than half the lawyers graduating are women today. can be equipped to go out in the world and have an effect on this. So it's counterproductive, and that's what gets the hackles of the write-up. At the same time, you understand the intention of the safe space is don't humiliate people, be considerate, be respectful of their opinions and their different perspectives. It's a fiction, the safe space, because the safe space is a hideout. And if you need a safe space, that's what therapists are for. Of course, the schools don't offer enough of that either. But it's like the culture. Our society is supposed to allow for that kind of forum where a safe space is not necessary, but it has become one where people believe that it is. So this is part of the ridicule of the movie. So thanks, Mona, for pointing that out. Okay, and then the boy enters the scene in the second hour. This is very interesting. Because the boy is a late entry and he is an unintended consequence. Christian and his assistant never meant to inflict harm upon the boy, but they're also without words to apologize properly for him. It's a working class neighborhood, Christian won't go out of the car because he might be recognized. I don't know, working class, but it's a dodgy area. Let's put it that way. And, but he does it anyway, as long as he can cover up his suit jacket. Let's go back. Before the dinner even. There's a beggar in the department store, and Christian asked the beggar to watch his packages, his bags, so he can go look for his girls. And what happens to Christian? He goes up the escalators. It's a fabulous shot from the bottom of one escalator, showing several layers of the floors of the department store, very rigid, a very architectural construction with people milling about, going back and forth like the city square. And he says, "Can you help me?" Again, this is the theme and nobody pays attention to him. So it's always among us. This is part of the lack of glue in our society, that there is no safe space. The square is a fiction, but the creation of the artwork, the square, is meant to call attention to the fact that we have no such square. So, okay, it's a little hard for some people who don't think and double think, to realize you can call attention to something by its absence, by somehow creating a surrogate. But that's art, and this is why a lot of people, especially engineers, I'm glad our favorite one is not here tonight because he'd have something to say about this. But you have to learn to take life meaningfully, not literally. And that means having the intellectual security to dig beneath the surface and to see things in another way. It's not Jews will never replace us. It's not Black people don't have the intelligence to do this. It's not immigrants are coming to take our jobs. No, it's not that at all. It's taking those positions as a knee-jerk reaction, as the default position, because you have nothing else to replace it with. I lay the feet at our educational system since Reagan, where public school budgets have been cut and cut and cut to the point where our public schools no longer serve the students because they're not prepared intellectually. They don't question authority. They don't question anything. They want it to be spoon-fed in a safe space. So this film brings out all these concepts when you look at it in this way. Okay, so we're past the dinner scene, which happens at 1 hour and 44 minutes into a movie that's 2.5 hours. We go to the boy in the stairwell. This was a heartrending scene because the boy, my God, he's arguing like an adult. He will not let up. This guy has a grasp upon Christian sensibility. And as we hear his voice in the distance through the doors of the stairwell, we still hear him. He's haunting, and Christian is haunted to the point where he goes out in the rain and he has to fish out the message with the phone number on it from the trash in the rain. Now, there's one very interesting shot where it's a high angle shot down on Christian with the rain pouring down. It's like the showerhead's point of view, and the trash is arranged around him like art. It's a colorful palette.
Yes.
You see, and it's like this hypocrisy. Is that art? Is it not art? Is it artful that the filmmaker says, you fool, you have to go through this when you could have solved it another way? It's a brilliant shot that asks questions of us as an audience. And we can't look for solid answers. We just have to look for an aesthetic sensibility that guides us to a feeling, to a place where we can interpret the art and take it in however we may, but so that we're more receptive to it. It's seductive in that way if you allow it to work on you. And you'll notice this is what the two marketing guys don't accept in the meeting at the museum. It doesn't matter what it's about. We need to make a fuss about it. So we have to find what's going to make other people write about it. So they create this maelstrom of an image of the blonde, and that's a big issue too, beggar girl getting blown up, which is reprehensible to any sensible person, but it's art, you know, and the world reacts negatively. But the guys, there's a very funny shot, you may have missed it. When Christian finally sees it, there's a cell phone shot of the guys FaceTiming their celebration. It worked, you see, we went viral. And they're congratulating themselves for creating this monstrous thought. And they're not artists. They are pranksters, jokesters, they're Machiavels. How else can we say it? They're proud that they have manipulated this artistic concept into meaning something other than what it was meant to mean. It means shock. But if you read the text in that 15-second piece, it says, what will it take to arouse your humanity to the inhumanity that's around us? Now, frankly, that's the big failure of the piece, because nobody really thought about that. They thought about blowing up the blonde girl. So we see this often. People respond to a detail and they take that as the part for the whole, and they miss the message. And we are constantly missing the message, you know, and some people are pranksters like DeSantis, who wants the people of Florida to miss the message that we were really cruel to Black people for 200 years or since 1619. You can't erase that from history, but he'd like to. He said, oh, well, slaves benefited by gaining skills as though they had none before. And of course, it's totally untrue. They had culture they brought with them, music, food, planting, you know, agriculture. It was a total denial of who they were as people. But no, they don't want to see, you know, they want to say, we did these heathens a favor. We superior white people, you know, raised these people out of the unnatural and undeveloped African wilderness. You know, forget about their human feelings when they were wrenched from their parents and children and died on the voyage over. I mean, the hypocrisy and the anti-fact bias of these people, all in the pursuit of, let's just find our comfort level and stay there and rationalize it. This is what this film is protesting. It's like, let's hurt ourselves with understanding or meaningfulness. Let's have the guy jump on the table and drag a woman off by her hair. Let's be shocked. Now, they may have gone too far in the film. I'm not saying they didn't. You didn't go too far for me because it had to. That was the ultimate statement of going too far. And of course, it was misunderstood as well. He had, you know, he had to resign because of the video, which he didn't even know, he didn't even see before it went out.
Yeah,
so let's
because he couldn't be
break.
bothered.
He
He didn't take the time to look at it.
be bothered, right? And why couldn't he be bothered, Steve?
He was in a rush to deal with some other emergency. I forget what it was.
Yeah, the boy, you know,
The boy.
the fallout, you know, the scratches on his car, you know, we got to go back, and he pulls Nikki out of the meeting because she has a driver's license. He doesn't want to be seen driving there, you know. He gets short-sighted, so I can see why some people said he's not a good dad. He gets wrapped up in his own concerns, and in a way, it's okay. It's okay for unemployed 60-year-old guys in Kansas and Texas to, you know, hate Biden, you know, because they feel they've been abandoned, and in many ways they were. But it's hard for East Coast elites, used to be a great term, not to see that and to feel that. And that's where the Democrats went wrong in the Trump election. We didn't feel their pain. They may not have been as educated as we. They may not have been aware or as worldly or as imaginative as we, or as receptive to art. But they felt their unemployment, and they felt their lives were ridiculed, and their service to this country in World War II was not appreciated. So we weren't sensitive to the legitimate discomfort and unhappiness that those MAGA people developed and that Trump exploited. Jeffrey, time for you. You're frozen on my screen, but if you can talk, go ahead.
So first of all, I thought that the kid's response was relentless, and he reminded me of the guy who was attacking people at the dinner. There was a relentlessness about it. And did anybody get a feeling in the beginning that they hit somebody with the car
Yes.
when they were
Yeah,
passing
I
out
thought so.
the flyers? So
Yeah.
my opinion of him was never
Okay.
good. And I thought that his talking points when he was talking to the interviewer at the beginning was just a bunch of gobbledygook that made no real sense.
The
And I
statement
think
that
he was
quoted.
also kind of a charlatan, a fraud. The fact that, he prepared to take his glasses off or whatever, in a Washingtonian style to, I'm going to speak from the heart. But I just want to point out that I think there's a level of absurdity to everything in the film. The idea of putting this teeny square in the center of this town to be a place where you can ask for help, and it which is ridiculous.
It's a symbol, Jeff. Don't misjudge the art. It's a symbol of what it might be. It's a symbol of the town square that isn't.
No,
So
me, it's the whole thing was fraudulent. It was something. If we can be good to each other outside of the square, then there's a statement of not much hope for us.
Wasn't that the point of it? That we're not nice to each other? So they created this fiction, if you will, of the square in order to point that out. To me, it was just a vehicle for pointing it out.
Again, this is the intellectual gymnastics that a thoughtful person who looks at art has to go through. And if you don't, it's like the movies we discuss here. It may be the movie's fault, that you didn't get it. But Jeff, I want to go back to something you said. We don't know for sure that he hit somebody. There were sparks flying twice, and then they went away. There was no hullabaloo outside from the other people.
Didn't he take a shower right afterwards because he was cleaning blood? We saw that there was some blood on him after he had cleaned his car. So
I don't know.
I didn't see blood.
We didn't see blood.
I don't recall ever having that. I did fear, oh my God, they hit somebody, so the plot thickens. Now they're going to have to cover for themselves, or they're going to confess. So you're right, he's morally challenged there. And maybe he doesn't perform as well. But I think we can't be definitive about what he was avoiding because we don't know for sure. I think we know he was ashamed to be seen in the neighborhood. And we know he regretted it very soon after when the boy shows up. Carol?
Oh, thank you. Hi. What can you say about the tug of war with the condom? I mean, that was a scene which we have not discussed. And I'd love to hear your take on that.
It's what was other people's take? There's no one take on it. I mean, he appears, he is a bit of a chameleon in that he's strong in some scenes and passive in others and weak and protective. My wife was watching it and she said, he didn't climax, so there was nothing in it, and he was ashamed. Well, that wasn't the point. No, that's not true. And what was he insisting upon? We don't know. He becomes very boyish and defensive, and
The tug
she's
of
like,
war, a tug of war game.
it was hilarious. And then the snap when he lets go, and then she walks off and she prances off with the trash can.
She
It's
brings the
hilarious.
trash can to the bed.
Yeah, but you see, it is absurd. And that argument was absurd. Just like the argument when she corners him at the museum and she says, "What happened between us?" And he says, "Well, we went back to your apartment, we had some wine," and she wants him to say we had sex. And he said, "Okay, but keep it quiet, and what happened?" And then she has, "You were inside me. And what does that mean to you?" Said, "What do you mean? What does it mean?" He said, "Well, it's absurd conversation that,
I must say, young people in general didn't come off very well in this movie.
No.
From his personal assistant, who was just a deceitful, hypocritical coward, really, to the young women at the marketing meetings who would
right.
at certain ideas but not really say
Okay.
up for anything, to this young lady you're talking about, who was definitely not real young but kind of young. They don't make a very good impression here.
Well, look, this is the fallout. I mean, and even Christian is guilty of some of the fallout. But he can at least see what the artist's intent is in this, is to point out man's inhumanity to man, whether it's active or passive. The point is,
no one has pointed out an obvious thing about the protagonist. Does anyone have a feeling about his name of being Christian?
it's so common. You're right. You're right. He's hardly Christ-like, but he tries to take that position sometimes.
I guess I've heard of too many artists named Christian, to have much of a reaction to that. So they're all named Christian. I don't know.
Okay.
Christian Louboutin with the red-soled shoes, another symbol of wealthy depravity. Fern.
Yeah, it is one of the few films that I've seen where they show the real battle between generations, not boomers versus younger people, but Gen X versus millennials. They have a disdain for each other. It's a big issue, and this film does show it. I mean, it really, in a way I haven't seen.
Good observation. Boomers don't enter into it. They just give 50 million kroner to the museum.
Yeah.
The
other thing,
both of them
in terms of the why he didn't want her to take the rubber from he was worried, I think, that she was going to use it in some way, impregnate herself.
Right.
That was my understanding. He was freaking out over that.
Or maybe blackmail.
Oh, okay. It didn't.
As a family law attorney who deals with that issue, that's what struck me.
Okay. Well, as somebody who's had particular experience with that, and I won't go further, they would not be viable, the sperm.
Yes, but he worried about it.
He did.
Well, okay, okay. I don't know, but it's funny, and I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, he has enough kids already. You're right. And he didn't trust her.
He didn't trust her.
I mean, he said, she doesn't know anything. She's an American. She can't understand. Yeah. Well, she is a bit, she's a bit of a loose cannon. She has an ape in her living room, and doesn't introduce them, right?
She's at least 2 standard deviations out, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. So everybody's a bit off, Yeah, Brad.
Jim, I want to come back to art with shocks. And we, of course, we have this video with this girl exploding. And I'm thinking, think about Picasso's Guernica and the impact that picture had at the time, or Goya's paintings about war. I don't think there's much of a difference. If Picasso was alive today, he could have done that video to make some kind of statement, because art shocks. That's one of the things that it does. Is it, as you pointed out, it takes us out of our comfort zone. And I think to that extent, Christian was somewhat admirable in that he was standing up for the freedom of the artist to shock.
Right. And the need of the populace to be shocked, that there's some advantage to it to be had by everybody if they'd only give themselves up to the experience. On that level, I want to mention that I got 2 emails from the administration of the synagogue. And somebody remembered the scene, the monkey scene, and thought it was too frightening, and maybe we should post ratings, about the films before the discussion, so nobody watches a film and is offended. Brad, you're shaking your head no. Tell me why.
That's what art does. Art shocks. That's
Okay.
what it's, I mean, that's absurd. We're adults here.
Well, okay. Again, this is an example of overly woke. The communications committee was concerned. They felt maybe we need to protect congregants from seeing stuff like this. And of course, this is not scripture. Of course, scripture is far bloodier and more awful than this. I can cite somebody who's not here tonight, who's not you, Risa, no, you're here. A member of the Torah study group who asked one time, why is everybody in the Bible so awful? Can't we just have good stories? And the answer is, no, this is who we are. And art, like religion, tries to pull back the veil and examine it and look closely at what is it? What are we? What do we mean to each other? How cruel are we? It's like, it's just a different human vehicle that we have been fortunate enough to evolve with to examine ourselves. So I did explain that I include a trailer, a link to a trailer in all my announcements, right? If you look at those trailers, they all have a rating at the front of them. And anybody who's really worried can do their own research online. And you may notice I have said when a film is a little racy or a little bloody, I'll make a mention of that, like White Tiger. I said it's a little bloody, or, I tried to plant these words, but I hope people were surprised by this and shocked by that scene. My brother-in-law in Hastings-on-Hudson, New York, emailed me, said, what? You're showing that for your people? And I said, I think they can handle it. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, it's that scene.
It even looked like a doll blowing up, It was a doll. You could tell it was a doll. That should.
No, that scene meaning the guy jumping on the table in the dinner scene.
The rape.
Because that even shocked him. And the guy's a sound recordist and is, photographed and recorded sound for far worse scenes than that. And is a sophisticated film viewer. So, I was very amused by it, but I said this scene is central to what the whole film is about. And it was justified because of the reaction to the viral video that happened just before it. And it's theater. It's political theater. And we can stand it. We are strong enough to take it, I hope. And we all were. Even if it made you uncomfortable, that's okay. That's why I ask you, Carol, isn't that good filmmaking? He made the scene so believable, you could see yourself being in it. And, the secret about movie making is that all the characters in it are stand-ins for us. We experience what they're feeling as we listen to their lines, see their reactions, see their actions, and we feel with them, whether the hero or the villain. And even stupid Hollywood movies have tried to humanize their villains so they're more credible, right? It's not just black hats and white hats. There's some gray area in between that the invaders from outer space are allowed to have, or the people with the virus, the ready to drop the viral bomb have, or the Middle Eastern guys with beards and dark skin. So at first I took offense at their comment, and then I thought I defended the film very well as saying this is organic to the purpose of the film and to our purpose here. which is personal growth through exposure to movies that affect us. And then we can examine our feelings and understand ourselves a little bit better, understand films better, be open to more things. So that's my mission with the group. And I you know, you don't have to defend me. I got an email back.
Why I enjoy coming to the Film Society thing, so we
Right,
can
well,
talk about if we watered
some-
it down
some
that way.
people-
I mean, geez.
No, I won't program film. You know, have I ever programmed a rom-com that didn't have a point? You know, I didn't do 4 Weddings and a Funeral, but you know, it's like, and I watched 2 films today. It's very funny. We're going to see one of them. Anybody see The Commitments in 1991 about a ragtag group of Dubliners who form a rock and roll band, a soul band? And then there's another film called The Sapphires about an Aboriginal group of sisters and a cousin who go to Vietnam to perform for the American troops. And that's, I think, 2013 or yeah. And it's like, it's okay to have fun. We're going to have fun, you know, with coming films, but there has to be a point. Why? You know, you don't need me to, you know, spin the dial on Netflix. Oh, Risa, you do it all the time anyway, I know, but the search tool there is awful. So I just wanted you to know that there are people who, even among our congregants, both lay and clergy, who may have been on the committee, I don't know who's on it. And I'm not ratting on them. I told them, I said, I respect your concerns. And when I choose these films, I'm really concerned about it. And I try and warn people when I feel it's necessary. I've never felt it necessary beyond a mention of blood or sex. But there are people watching out for us, but sometimes they watch out too much.
Are these
I'm
people
happy
in the
they look
group?
for it. I'm happy I'm happy they watched the film, but I
They
really
didn't.
feel
No,
Well,
the
didn't
group
watch
didn't. Somebody saw the film and remembered this scene from it and thought maybe it's too much.
okay.
So, okay, that's a part for the whole as well. You know, this is a mistake that we make politically, we make personally, we make emotionally. You said this, therefore you're an awful person. Well, you don't know why I said it. You know, it's like, it's not just the one thing, it's the context in which it exists. And films are all about context. Steve, did you want to say something? Steve Zimmerman?
Oh,
Steve Miller.
I thought I already, I thought I chipped in a comment already. Yeah.
Okay. All right, well,
Mona has
it's
been waiting again. You keep missing Mona.
well, see on my screen, excuse me, Mona, on my screen you're frozen.
But
So I think you
nobody's
can't
frozen
hear me.
except on your screen.
Okay, Mona, please speak.
People were laughing because I was dancing with my arms.
Mona,
I couldn't
stop
see it.
raising your hand and just talk.
I was thinking of
It activates your screen.
Carol's very interesting question about what was the point of the condom scene. And I think the point of the scene was to show a fundamental lack of trust between these two people who have just had sex. So even though they've engaged in a very intimate act, he can't trust her enough to take the condom and throw it out, because I had the same reaction that Fern had, that he has this fear that somehow she'll try to impregnate herself and then go after him. But I thought it was very interesting. I found the star of the film incredibly handsome. And I thought it was very interesting that in that sex scene, Elizabeth Moss is, you know, violent and incredibly active and physical. And he's like for most of the scene, he's covered up. He won't even put the condom on where she can see him. He's like isolated under the blanket. And then this tug of war, I thought the whole movie actually was about people not trusting each other. If he had trusted that kid and just immediately written a note and said, I was mistaken, your child is not a thief, that could have been the end of it, but he didn't have enough trust to do that. And the whole movie is full of things like that. If the audience had trusted the instructions at the gala dinner
Yeah,
and believed that you will become prey unless you stay perfectly still, these horrible things wouldn't have happened.
Well, that woman who he
The other thing
attacked,
I did want to say,
the woman he
I had to wait
attacked.
so long. Wait 1 second, because I have literally sat here for most of the program and only talked twice. Is that I didn't think the media consultants were so stupid. The media consultants understood very well that there was no popularity, no eyeballs interested in a safe, peaceful space that was full of virtue. They immediately insisted you have to have controversy, you have to have conflict,
right.
you have to have something edgy, you have to have something newsworthy. All of these old-fashioned virtues, like, taking care of each other, I think they understood that. I didn't think they were stupid. They had a job. The idea was to have it blow up and get a zillion eyeballs on the publicity and have everybody going to visit the museum. I think they had no sensitivity, but I didn't think they were stupid. I think they thought the point of the art would never engender the kind of public response. And that in itself is a very sad commentary on what has happened in our society. And it's true,
Right. Art has become a commodity to be manipulated and sold. And our measure of success is eyeballs, not content. So there you have it. It's like box office, putting butts in chairs for a university. We're popular. Everybody wants to come here, but what do you teach? Well, who knows? Okay. Joel Jaspin's screen has a hand waving at me. Speak and you will become alive.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. 2 comments on the camera work. When he was going up to where the boy lived, the stairway was a square. It kept going up and higher. So that. And then could you comment on the use of mirrors? There seemed to be a lot of times when we saw him, but we didn't see him directly. We saw him through mirrors.
Well, that's another one, a way of saying, is it real or is it Memorex? Is it a reflection? Is it a construction or is it real? Different points of view. There are 2 stairwells. One is in his own apartment building when he's looking for the boy, who he hears distantly saying, "Help me." The boy's bike eventually leaves from the bottom of the stairwell. I want to call attention to the ending of the film.
About the boy, and that the boy wasn't where he thought that he would be. What happened to him?
We don't know. It's not explained. He goes away.
Family left.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what happens after the stairwell scene? He falls down. He tries to rouse the neighbors, and none of them come out. That's not entirely believable. But and then what about the daughter's performance at the gymnastics contest? And then on the way home, he wants to take them to the boy's home. And to me, this is what says this is just a dad trying to be good to his kids. He says, "Stay here." And they say, "No, we don't really want to. We want to come with you." And he says, "Okay, you can see this. I'm not ashamed. I want you to see me apologize." And then he goes to the door, and the kind of clueless guy, who has a bit of a gypsy look to him, if I can profile him that way, says, "I think they moved some time ago." And the last image is back in the car, and it's not on him, it's on the daughter. And what that, to me, it says, he lost his chance to redeem himself because he didn't act soon enough. It would have meant so much to that boy and to his parents, for him to apologize to them, but he didn't do it soon enough, and he lost that chance. And this is like the legacy that his daughters are inheriting, and that's why they're in the last image. This is what we bequeath to future generations. These are the losses that come from not being sensitive to other people, not being more objective about how our actions are come across to people. and how they feel and how they live.
Jim, Marina's been waiting.
Rita's waiting.
Okay, Marina, go.
Okay, thank you. I have two questions. Did anybody else pay attention to the cufflinks? Because Christian thought that the cufflinks were stolen and then somehow they fall off, they were there. And another thing, he recorded an apology, a very long-winded and partly incomprehensible and self-serving apology, but he did. Did he post it to, did he send it to the boy's phone number?
I think so, because he was addressing the boy in particular. But it became this statement of social policy that governments need to get involved in this, and we're all at fault. And yes, it was self-serving, but also he dared to say that we're all at fault. And it's clearly room for governmental intervention, you know, which.
So he just wanted to find a way out of, he kind of apologized, but he also wanted to find a way out of it.
Well, he apologized bluntly first. It was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry. But is it a way out or is it a solution? It doesn't mean he's now saying, I'm not sorry. He's still sorry. So I didn't see it as a way out of his apology. It's just an extension of it, taking it beyond the immediate personal problems to his professional view of society and what we need to do and the function of art. You know,
he was saying not that it wasn't just me, it's the whole world.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And does anybody, we have to close soon. Mona, your hand is still up. And I don't mean over your mouth, because that's what it looks like to me. But if you have something to say, go ahead. Okay. So I don't have a new film. It may be, are you guys ready for some fun?
Yeah.
You know, for the next film in 2 weeks? If so, it may be The Sapphires. It's a musical film. It's a soul film with soul music sung by 3 Aboriginal sisters in Australia and their cousin, and they go to Vietnam to entertain the troops. And it is a lot of fun, and it's remarkable. It's made by some of the same people who made Top End Wedding. Remember, that's about an Aboriginal woman who goes back to the North Country to find her mother, to marry some guy, and it's all about their journey. We love that film. It was a lot of fun. This was made before that, and I just rediscovered it today, and it's charming because it's really all about the people and the relationships that develop between the 4 women and the one guy who's played by Chris O'Dowd, who was in Bridesmaids and a lot of other recent American films. A real charming guy, and I think you'll like it. So that'll be a bit of levity, but it's meaningful, and lots of other surprises. I do encourage people to see Barbie and Oppenheimer. I don't think we'll be talking about either one, but it will inform you as to the state. It kind of relates to this discussion because these are films that took mainstream techniques and did something totally unique with them. And Chris Nolan finally found some subject matter that's worthy of his talents. Dunkirk was pretty good too, if you've not seen it. It's almost a silent film, visual film told about the armada of fishing boats from London that went across the Channel to rescue British soldiers from the encroaching Nazis before D-Day. And so it's an exceptionally skillful film about Robert Oppenheimer. And then Barbie is exceptionally intelligent and well thought out. And it takes political polemics into the mainstream by using a vehicle that people who've never watched a polemical or political film would watch. And if this doesn't tell you it might be good, you won't be convinced. Young women are taking their boyfriends to it to wake them up to women's issues. And they're using it as an acid test for their new dates to see if the man is sufficiently woken up to be worthy of their attention. So to do that in a mainstream studio vehicle is just brilliant. And hats off to her and Noah Baumbach and the other team, and Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. It's really an important social film. Aesthetically, it's an absurdist, playful drama. It's almost like an Ionesco play or something that's it's totally abstract, but it's definitely worth your seeing. And take your granddaughters to it and take your grandsons to it. And I don't think you'll regret it. So that's it for tonight. It's 9 o'clock. Great discussion. I'm so glad you people man upped, if I can use that term, and saw the film without complaint and got something out of it. And we'll see each other in 2 weeks. You'll hear from me very soon. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.